I think it is clear to believe in the power of ideas.
Fresh thinking of the Manhattan Institute.
If I could have your attention, please, we'll get started. If everybody could sit down. If I could have your attention. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Larry Mone, president of the Manhattan Institute. This is a first in a series of forums on ideas for the new decade. As a lifelong New Jersey resident, it is my honor to introduce Governor Christie this morning. The state of New Jersey has a certain reputation, one that is colorfully illustrated in a recently published book titled The Soprano State. The Soprano State details the kind of you-couldn't-make-this-up tales of corruption and runaway spending that have come to symbolize New Jersey politics and government in recent years. The hero of the book, however, is Christie, who as U.S. Attorney from 2002 to 2008 prosecuted scores of public corruption cases. The authors describe him as, quote, a man determined to change the way New Jersey Pols do business. Last November, New Jersey voters gave Christie that opportunity when they shocked the political establishment by electing him governor. And today, the governor continues to shock the political establishment by running a bold experiment. He is treating voters like adults, telling them what's needed to get out of their predicament and following through on his promises. Faced with an enormous budget deficit, $10.7 billion on a $29.3 billion state budget, Governor Christie has slashed government spending and proposed a comprehensive budget reform package that includes the kind of serious structural reforms that New York and other states should be undertaking. Under Governor Christie's leadership, New Jersey is being transformed from a national laughingstock into a national model, and the media is beginning to pay attention. Bill McGurn recently compared Governor Christie to Ronald Reagan in the Wall Street Journal, and George Will recently dubbed the governor the Trenton Thunder, and noted that his struggle to get control over skyrocketing public employee benefits is one that, quote, will dominate the nation's domestic policymaking in this decade. George Will is right. As our Manhattan Institute scholars have pointed out in their writing, our current fiscal problems are not primarily the result of the recent economic downturn. Rather, they are the consequences of years and years of reckless spending by the public sector. The good news, however, is that the general public is beginning to understand that the status quo is untenable, and they are electing courageous political leaders like Christie who are willing to make the tough decisions needed to restore fiscal sanity to state and local government. The Manhattan Institute looks forward to working with Governor Christie to offer ideas on how to reduce the size and cost of government, and we are honored to have the governor here with us today. Please join me in welcoming the governor of the state of New Jersey, Christie.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much, and thank you for welcoming me to what I consider the wrong side of the river. It's a great day today, both for New Jersey and for New York, because I think about 4 o'clock this afternoon, we're going to hear that the Super Bowl is coming to this area in 2014, and that'll be great for our economy. It'll be great for the spirit and the morale of our region, and I'm looking forward to some good news this afternoon in that regard. And given what I've had to do over in New Jersey, any good news, is okay. You take it from any area you can get it. I thank you for not only welcoming me, but welcoming my wife, Mary Pat, who is with me this morning, and also the person who is fighting the fight with me to do the things that Larry talked about. The Senate Minority Leader, who I hope by the next midterm election will be the Senate President in New Jersey, State Senator Tom Kean Jr. is here with me this morning, too. So as Larry mentioned, as you all know, we have a fiscal crisis in New Jersey. Numbers have been updated, Larry. It's a $10.9 billion deficit on a $29.3 billion budget. At 37%, it's the worst budget deficit percentage in America. It's worse than California, it's worse than New York, it's worse than Illinois, and we've needed to take bold steps to deal with it. On March 16th, we put forward a budget with $10.9 billion in reductions against the proposed spending of the Corzine administration, and not a nickel of income tax increases to close that gap. Now, this wasn't easy to do, so I want to start off by saying that while I stand firmly behind the cuts and I will do everything I can to fight for them in the legislative session that will end on June 30th, don't take that firm stance as meaning that I favor each and every one of the cuts that needed to be made. I know how painful they are and how difficult they are for a number of the people in our state. And everybody would love to be governor in a time when you can just give things away, make everybody happy, make everybody your friend. But those are not the times where I was elected and not the leadership that I was asked to provide. I feel an obligation now to stand up and do what the people elected me to do, which is, of course, to get our government under control, to start reducing the amount of money that people have to pay to the government in taxes. But if all we do is cut and we don't get to the underlying problem, we're just going to be back in the spot year after year. So let's talk about New Jersey's unsustainable fiscal course. I'll give you some statistics. Over the last 10 years, municipal spending, besides state spending, municipal spending has grown by 69% in the last 10 years. And as a result, property taxes in New Jersey have grown by 70% over the last 10 years, giving us the highest property taxes in America. This is clearly an unsustainable course. For nearly 30 years, the citizens of New Jersey have placed in the hands of politicians, mostly in Trenton, the responsibility for fixing property taxes. And in every gubernatorial election since 1973, we've had folks dancing around this property tax issue, putting Band-Aids on it, not doing a thing, though, to address the structural issues that allow politicians to hike property taxes year after year after year. We can't increase municipal aid, increase aid to school districts, increase property taxes without end. At some point, the people's ability to pay runs out. And ladies and gentlemen, we are now at that moment. With property taxes up so high in the last 10 years, people in New Jersey are now voting with their feet. They're leaving. They're leaving our state in droves. Senior citizens are leaving their homes where they raise their kids because they can no longer afford the property taxes to stay in the house. Young couples can't buy their first homes, not because mortgages aren't available, not because the prices of the homes are too high, but because they can't afford the property taxes. And middle-class families that are suffering from the 9.8% unemployment that we have in New Jersey, the highest in the region, higher than Pennsylvania, higher than New York, higher than Connecticut, are suffering too. Many of them are finding that after they've lost their jobs, they're going to lose their homes as well because their property taxes have gotten beyond what they're able to pay. In every poll you'll ever see, New Jerseyans are asked what the most important issue is, and they say it's property taxes. So how do we fix it? First and foremost, we have to impose discipline on every level of the political system because the politicians have shown that they are either unwilling or unable to impose that discipline. So that's why our proposal starts with cap 2.5, a constitutional amendment to cap property tax increases at no more than 2.5% a year. We've been passing the buck for decades on this issue, and the public has been waiting for politicians to finally fix this problem. And the people in my state, quite candidly, have had enough, and that's the only reason I'm standing here. Because in a state with 700,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans, in a state that Barack Obama won by 500,000 votes in 2008, in a state where I was outspent 3-1 by a Democratic incumbent, I would not be standing here if the people had not had enough and were demanding change. And I ran on a very simple, straightforward set of principles. I believe in less government, in lower taxes, and empowering local officials who act on behalf of the people who have elected them, empowering them to make the decisions. Because you know, if you're a mayor of a town, your county executive, they know where to find you. They see you at the dry cleaners, at the baseball field, at the supermarket, and those elected officials are the ones who are most directly affected by the public's anger and their ability to reach you. Now, as you may have seen in New Jersey, that leads to a disagreement or two. And just recently, I understand that some of you may have seen a friendly little exchange with a reporter that I had that was on YouTube. But anyone who comes to this discussion talking about the issues like you can't cut this, you can't possibly cut that, those are people who don't understand that our public is at the breaking point. Those are people who don't understand that things that used to be considered sacred cows, things that used to be considered the third rail in politics, no longer are. They've been replaced by the unaffordability, the absolute unaffordability of life in my state. When we enact this constitutional amendment to limit property taxes to no more than 2.5% across the board annually, we will have put in place a foundation for getting our fiscal house in order for the first time in a generation. And with that in place, we can begin to look at what we really need to do, which is in a sustainable way get New Jersey towards urban revitalization, education improvements, and every other big picture issue. But we'll never get to that if we don't fix the foundation, because we're broke. I mean, we're broke. And if we don't fix these problems, all the rest of them will fall by the wayside as well. Now, fundamental fairness dictates that, don't just do as I say and do as I do. So on the state level, this constitutional amendment must also cap discretionary state spending at 2.5%. State spending outside debt service or aid to municipalities and school districts has to be capped at 2.5% as well. We must lead by example at the state level. We just cannot impose a cap on municipalities and not impose the same cap on us. Because the temptation will then be, when economic times get better, to allow state government to grow again out of control. Let me give you an idea of the explosive growth of government during the McGreevey and Corzine years in New Jersey. If projected spending of the Corzine administration for this coming fiscal year would have been permitted to go forward, over the last 20 years, state spending in New Jersey will have risen by 322%. That's 16% a year, every year, for 20 years. There is simply no economic model that can sustain that level of public sector growth. And on the local level, this growth has also continued unabated. Even as we speak, it continues in New Jersey on the local level, despite the economic downturn. Consider this fact. In 2009, we lost 121,000 private sector jobs in New Jersey, while at the same time, municipal employment and school board employment rose by 11,300 jobs. The private sector shrank while the government grew. Now, that's exactly backwards. That's not the way it's supposed to happen. It's supposed to be in the other direction. Now, the leadership in the state legislature in New Jersey believes that the solution to this problem is to increase taxes again, for the 116th time in the last 9 years. They passed a bill last week to raise the top marginal tax rate to 10.75% on those who make over $1 million a year, both individuals and small businesses. I vetoed that bill literally 1 minute. I vetoed it literally 1 minute after the Senate President handed it to me. I was watching the debate in my office on the computer. I saw that the bill was passed. I know that the Senate President enjoys theater as much as I do. So I knew he'd be making his way down the hallway, so I had the veto table set up in my outer office, the chairs set up for the press corps, the veto messages on the desk, and the pens I would use set up there. So as he walked in the door of the governor's office, he said, "I'm here to see the governor." I came out the door, I took the bills, and I said, "Stay here, this won't take long." He sat down, I vetoed both bills, I handed them back to me, and he said, "We'll be back." And I said, "We'll see." Threatening a veto override, I know I have nothing to be concerned about because Senator Kaine is here. And none of those Republicans in the Senate caucus will vote for a veto override under any circumstances because they know that taxes in New Jersey have gotten too high. And the other problem, of course, is that these taxes don't work. And we have a concrete example for that as well. In fiscal year 2009 in New Jersey, our audited financial statements for fiscal year 2009 said that the state collected $10.476 billion in income taxes. And at that time, in that fiscal year, there was no surcharge on these high net worth individuals and small businesses. In fiscal year 2010, the one we're in right now, with Governor Corzine's surcharge of 10.75% applying to small businesses and individuals, the state has actually collected $10.243 billion in income taxes, $233 million less than the year without the surcharge. Now, higher taxes are going to continue to drive people from New Jersey, and there's no economic model to prove that they actually help us from a revenue perspective. In fact, they hurt us because more people continue to leave the state to go to places where their capital is treated more kindly. And these higher taxes continue to keep our private sector job growth at zero. Let me emphasize that to you. In the entire first decade of this century, New Jersey had zero private sector job growth. We have, in fact, less private sector jobs in New Jersey today than we did in May of 2000. The direct result of the tax policies that have been pursued during that decade by the Corzine and McGreevey administrations. It seems pretty clear to me we have to change the course. We have to cap property tax increases. We have to cap discretionary spending. They go together. But that's still incomplete. We have to give the mayors and the local officials a toolkit to be able to deal with providing services in this new environment, a capped environment. So what things do we need to give them? First, on collective bargaining reform. Nearly 75% of every municipal or county budget, as a county executive will tell you, is driven by personnel and labor costs. We need to level the playing field on these costs through collective bargaining reform for our public sector unions. I stand foursquare in favor of binding arbitration to resolve disputes with our public employees who do not have the ability to strike: police, fire, teachers. Arbitration is there to be sure that these things are fairly resolved, but the key word there is fairly resolved. More often than not, these decisions have been favorable to labor, too favorable to labor. But they're not always fair to the taxpayers who wind up paying the bill for what the arbitrator decides. So under collective bargaining reform, every arbitrator will have to take into account cap 2.5. There could be no longer any allowance for an award that is higher than that cap. For the first time, arbitrators will have to consider not only who's sitting at the table, but who's sitting at home paying the bills. Municipalities, mayors, and the taxpayers shouldn't be at the mercy of unelected arbitrators who can effectively impose a property tax increase after being elected by no one. Under this reform, they'll no longer be able to do it. Now, everyone values the hard work that our public employees do, but it is long overdue for us to have civil service reform, and that's the next step in the toolkit. Civil service was set up, as you know, over a century ago to protect against illegal firings due to political patronage. But now we've layered collective bargaining on top of the civil service system. Both systems trying to protect those who work in public life. We don't need both. And I'd suggest to you that civil service needs to go. I think labor is best served by collective bargaining and not by civil service. And civil service opt-out will permit our mayors and our county executives to be able to make decisions on their government like it's a business. So if there's someone who isn't doing their job, then get rid of them. If the job's no longer necessary, it can eliminate it. And if it can't reassign the employee, it can let them go too. Civil service reform is going to give mayors the tools to do that. And if you talk to any mayor across New Jersey, civil service and binding arbitration are the two biggest obstacles to them being able to control their labor and personnel costs. Now let's turn to one of my favorite subjects, the New Jersey Teachers Union. When we're taking into account what we spend and how we give raises, we can't act as if health care costs and pension costs aren't a part of it. This has been my big argument with the teachers union over the last number of months, and from the reaction of some people, you may have heard a little bit about the back and forth that I've had with the teachers union. In fact, this weekend, I did more for Trenton's economy than any governor in the history of New Jersey. 35,000 protesters on a Saturday in Trenton. It's more people than they've had in Trenton downtown on a Saturday in recent history. And I hope those small businesses in Trenton appreciate the sacrifice I'm making for them. And seriously, everyone values the hard work that teachers do. And this is not about teachers. This is about a absolutely out of control union that is used to getting everything it wants. They've got the argument a little messed up in my view. They call me a bully. They had all kinds of signs, this weekend. Governor Christie is a bully. They're missing the point. I came onto the schoolyard just in January, and I saw all these people laying there bloodied and beaten up, and I saw who was standing. It was the teachers union. They're the bully. And what they're not... And for the last 30 years, governors have walked into that schoolyard in Trenton. They've seen that big bully standing over in the corner and the people that they've knocked over, and they've said, maybe I can make nice. Maybe if I give them a little bit, they'll give me a little bit. And what's happened over the course of those 30 years is each governor has given a little bit and a little bit more and a little bit more, and nothing is given back in return. Nothing by their union. They take and they take and they take. And so it's the union that's the problem, not the teachers. And when you look at what happens in health benefits, that's just one good example. This union has decided that everyone they represent is entitled to free medical, dental, and vision benefits for themselves and their families from the day they are hired until the day they die. Now, listen, you may think I'm exaggerating, but I am not. In the main in New Jersey, neither the members nor their union pays a penny towards their health care. Not a penny. Now, that's a pretty sweet deal. And I can't think of any other job where the employer says, well, listen, don't worry about your health insurance. We'll just throw that in no matter what it costs. And in fact, pick whatever plan you like. In fact, take the most expensive one. We won't even give you a choice. Let's take the Cadillac plan and give it to you. I don't understand why the teachers union doesn't understand that while everybody else in New Jersey and across the country is paying for a part or all of their health insurance, that we should have to pay for all of theirs. It simply doesn't make common sense. It's a question of fairness. I'm not asking them to pick up 100% of their premiums. I'm not even asking them to pick up 50% of their premiums. In fact, I've even asked them to pick up 25% of their premiums, even though that's what I paid as a federal employee, and all federal employees pay 25% of premium across the entire country. I'm not even asking them for 10%. I asked them to pay 1.5% of their salary towards their health benefits. 1.5%. Now, for the average teacher that makes $55,000 a year in New Jersey, we're talking about $825 annually for full family medical, dental, and vision coverage. That's less than $69 a month. Now, in the private sector, this is a deal that employees would run each other over to get. The response of the teachers union? This is the gravest attack on public education in the history of the world. Now, see, I don't get this because I don't understand why my child will learn better if they have the comfort of knowing that their dear teacher is paying nothing towards their health benefits. I can't imagine your child coming home and saying, I can't study. I'm overwrought with anxiety. Why? Why are you overwrought with anxiety? My teacher has to pay 1.5% of their salary for their health benefits. Come on, Dad, buck up. You pay it for them. I mean, this is ridiculous. It's laughable. Yet, you have the head of the teachers union on Saturday standing up at this rally saying, we are not the problem. There have never been more incorrect words spoken in front of the State House in Trenton, and that is a high bar, ladies and gentlemen, a high bar. Because I believe that most teachers become teachers because they find it so rewarding. They want to make a good living. They want to have financial security just like all the rest of us. But the difference between 0 and 1.5% is not going to cause a dedicated teacher to leave the profession. It's not going to stop a kid in college who wants to be a teacher from joining the profession. I think when the union makes that argument, they sell their members and their profession extraordinarily short. And they may do that, but I'm not going to. I'm going to challenge teachers to be a part of the solution and to challenge their union. Now, we've had mixed success at that so far, but it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. So we need to give mayors and school board members the ability to negotiate a full menu of health benefits that folks can choose from at varying costs with varying kinds of coverage. Now, this isn't revolutionary. It happens, as you know, in the private sector every day. It's happening with federal employees. Why should state and local government workers in New Jersey have a better deal than federal employees? They're all government workers. And federal employees seem to be doing just fine by paying that portion of their benefits. This is just restoring some common sense to a totally out of control system. And if you wonder how much it cost, this year alone in New Jersey's budget, $823 million on retiree health benefits alone. That $823 million just on retiree health benefits. And you have the teachers union complaining about my $820 million cut to K-12 education. Much of that cut wouldn't be necessary if people would start contributing towards their own health benefits like it's done in the rest of the civilized world outside of New Jersey. Pension reform is also necessary, and we've passed some pension reform already in New Jersey as it applies to future employees, but we need to get to the problem of present employees. Our pension system is $46 billion in deficit. Now, I want that pension to be there for the police officers, the firefighters, and the teachers who are counting on it for their retirement. Don't let anybody tell you that this problem is caused by the failure of our state to stand up to its commitment to fund these pensions. That's part of the problem, but it's not the whole thing. If the state had contributed every dollar it was supposed to over the last 10 years to the pension system, our pensions would be funded at 74% of their needed value. Today, they're valued at 64%. So what does that tell you? It tells you that our benefits are too rich and the employees are not contributing enough either. It's not just a problem of the state not making its contribution. So we need to make sure that we reform this pension system so that it's there for the folks who are depending upon it. And their unions are singing them the siren song that you can have it all. We can't. We can't have it all. Not in this economy, not with a burgeoning budget deficit, not with long-term debt when you combine pension and retiree health benefits that is over $100 billion. We can't do it. And we are careening our way towards becoming Greece. And I don't want New Jersey to be the textbook example for failed European economies. Now, I'll end with this so you can understand what's really at stake here. Last week, I had a town hall meeting in Hoboken, right across the river, and I talked to a family, a husband, a wife, and their 3 young boys, all under the age of 10. They had a property tax increase last year of $2,000, their increase. It's an incredible financial hit for any family to take, especially in 1 year. It's not as if you can go to your employer, especially in these economic times, and say, hey, I need another $2,000. My property taxes went up. If Cap 2.5 had been in place for this family, Joe, Jennifer, their 3 boys, their property taxes would have gone up $213, not $2,000. Instead, as a result, for the first time, their property taxes now exceed the $10,000 a year mark. So instead of paying the mortgage or making a down payment on the car, or saving for college or taking a vacation, or just keeping up with what it costs to live in this region of the country, another $2,000 of their paycheck gets sucked up in that 10-year, 70% increase in property taxes. We're long past the point where politicians in Trenton can justify this kind of drain on a family's income, this kind of dampness on their hope for the future. With Cap 2.5, there's only one way out if you want to raise taxes more than 2.5%, and that is to put it on the ballot and let the voters decide. Now, they've done it in Massachusetts, and about half the time the voters say, you know what, it's worth me paying an extra point in taxes this year to have this new program, this new building, or to hire more police officers. The other half of the time they say no. But the control is finally in the hands of the people and not the politicians who have messed up this system for the last 30 years. These property taxes hurt seniors, they hurt middle-class families, they hurt young families, they hurt everyone in New Jersey because they're done without regard to your ability to pay them. This cap will permit there to be no greater increase than 2.5%. Now, it will also put this in control of the people of the municipalities, and that's going to be a good thing. It's going to be a good thing to increase participation in our democracy. More people, I guarantee you, if a property tax proposal is on the ballot, are going to get out there and vote in November when they know they can have an effect directly on how much they're going to be paying in taxes. So we put 33, I'll just give you the highlights, we put 33 specific bills on the desk of the legislature for their consideration regarding all of these reforms. And I think finally, after 3 decades of passing the buck, we're going to finally stand up and deal with this problem. We're going to build a sound fiscal foundation for our state. We're going to say no to those who refuse to understand that the days of something for nothing are over, and the days of shared sacrifice are here. We're going to stand up to the entrenched special interests that are unused to having the truth told to them without regard to the political consequences. And we're going to stand up for the future of our children and our grandchildren, a future in New Jersey that is hopeful and optimistic and full of opportunity and prosperity in a private sector that is growing and in a public sector that stops the annual grab for taxpayers' wallets. The legislature needs to do their job. They need to put Cap 2.5 on the ballot this November as a constitutional amendment and let the people decide how their government should tax them at the local level. We need to get rid of these out-of-control property taxes. We need to put them back under the control of the people. And we need at the state level to finally say no to the public sector unions who believe that they have a birthright to ever-increasing taxes, a birthright to ever-increasing benefits, a birthright to ever-increasing pensions. This, in my opinion, is the public issue of this decade. If we do not change course, if we continue to allow the tail to wag the dog, if we continue to allow a minority group of union leaders to define for us our standard of living, then we are bound to be grease. We are bound to be buried under a mound of taxes and debt that our children will not be able to dig out from. Because remember this, we're going to be fine. We've survived these problems in the short term, and for the number of years we have left, we'll be just fine. This is about our children and our grandchildren, and what kind of New Jersey they're going to be able to live in, if they're able to live there at all, and what kind of America they're going to have to live in. And so the stakes here are no less than the future that we want our children and grandchildren to have. And that's the way I'm going to continue to frame this issue and talk about it in New Jersey. And everyone here at the Manhattan Institute, those who work on these ideas and those of you who support the work of these ideas, are going to be integral to the fight that I'm talking about. Because if we don't stand up and say we are ready and willing to take on the tough fights and make the difficult decisions, then we are, in my opinion, abrogating the most solemn responsibility we have as human beings. And that is to leave this place better for our children and grandchildren than it was left to us. I ran for governor because I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I love our state, and I want our children and grandchildren to be there as well. And even more, I want your children and grandchildren to be able to choose to live where they want and have a life that they can afford to live with optimism and with hope and with the great spirit that typifies our great country. And so the fight is engaged, ladies and gentlemen. The battle lines are drawn, and it is up to you. I've already staked out my position, and I'm going to live or die politically, although the teachers union have prayed for the alternative. I will live or die by the results. It is the ground we have staked out as Republicans in New Jersey together. And it is the ground we will stand on and fight for over the course of the next decade. And if we're successful, we're going to have a greater New Jersey and a greater America because of it. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
The governor has consented to answer a few questions. We have 3 mics around the room, so I'll acknowledge you, but please wait till the microphone gets to you so everybody can hear your question.
Now, if you've seen that YouTube video, now comes the fun part.
Over here?
Sir?
Yeah.
Governor,
Hey, Steve.
terrific presentation. You're under assault from the teachers' unions. They're spending a lot of money on ads against you. And one of the things that's mystified us at the Journal is why business groups and others aren't doing more to support you. And I wonder, what you think needs to be done, because this is not just a fight for New Jersey, it's a fight for the whole country. And by the way, thank you for what you're doing. It's just incredible.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. Listen, I think this has all caught people a little bit by surprise in terms of a gathering of momentum and support, and I think you've seen that too, Steve. Despite the fact that this is what I campaigned on, I was very clear, and I think sometimes the Journal editorial page didn't think I was clear enough during the campaign. But I was pretty clear on the principles that were going to guide what I was going to do. Smaller government, less spending, lower taxes to help build private sector economic growth again. Now, when you put the specifics on that, people get agitated because we're cutting every program across the board. I think that the slowness of some other groups to engage in this battle in support of the issue, it's not about me. Because in the end, I just happen to be the guy who's here at the moment and having to grapple with this problem. It's about the larger principle that we talked about today. What kind of state do we want? What kind of country do we want? I suspect that we'll see these groups become engaged more as we move further down the road. Now, given that the Teachers Union and the CWA, AFSCME, have spent now, since my budget address on March 16th, has spent over $5 million on TV and radio advertising in New Jersey, just since March 16th, attacking me. I wish they'd come quickly, Steve. You know, I mean, I get a little nervous here. But the other thing that you need to know is we're winning this argument. Now, I've made nearly $11 billion in cuts in the next fiscal year, impounded $2.2 billion when I got there to keep fiscal year 10 in balance, because the Corzine administration had wildly overspent the revenue projections and left me with that gift on January 19th. So that's over $13 billion in spending. You know you're going to hurt a lot of people's feelings when you're doing that. Yet every poll that I've seen still shows me with, you know, job approval ratings that are right side up. That tells you something. It's not that people like everything I'm doing, but they like that I'm doing something. And I think that's what people want. And when they have more time to think about it and they see the results that are going to happen, business interests are going to get behind this plan. But more importantly, regular citizens, both in New Jersey and across the country, will, because they know in their hearts that there's not something for nothing. This is something our parents taught us. This is not some revolutionary principle. And so people are going to get it, and I think people will come to the aid of the cause eventually. And, you know, for my own survival, I hope it's sooner rather than later. But, you know, at the end of the day, I said during the campaign, I know you heard me say this and others did too, I candidly don't care about a second term. I really don't. You know, I was fortunate enough to win a first one. I'm going to do what I need to do in this job, to do it the way I believe in my heart it needs to be done. And if that leads to 4 more years, that's great. But, you know, Mary Pat and I have talked about this many times. We're trying to get used to this whole new life, the two of us, and it's a bit different, to say the least, and the attention is a bit different. But we have said that with the time it takes away, you know, from our children, we have 4 children between 6 and 16, 2 boys and 2 girls. When I'm done with this, whenever that is, and they ask me later on, Dad, what did you do? Why did you do it? I don't want to say to them, listen, I maneuvered and slithered and, you know, avoided and ducked and bobbed and weaved, but look under that official portrait in the governor's office. I got 8 years. I don't care about that. If it says only 4, I'm going to be able to say to them, I stood up for a better state and a better country for you. That's what I did.
Yes, Governor, just last week in another one of those polls of businesses across the country, Jersey was ranked 3rd worst in the country as a place to do business, behind New York and California.
I can't believe you guys beat us.
Yeah. This is nothing new, actually. But given your budget constraints, and given that taxes aren't just high on businesses, but there are a lot of taxes in Jersey that businesses feel are just patently unfair, what kind of maneuvering room do you have to begin to improve the state's business environment? How long is that going to take?
Well, listen, I think we've already started to make progress in that regard. The McGreevey and Corzine administrations have put in a corporate business tax surcharge. See, what it really was a corporate business tax increase. But when you call it a surcharge, you give people the illusion that it's temporary. And then they put a sunset provision on it to give the further illusion that it's temporary. But here's what I've learned now in 4 months in Trenton, that when it comes to taxes and the Democrats, the sun never sets in Trenton. It's in the sky 24 hours a day. And so calling it a surcharge is a misnomer. They had a corporate business tax increase, which is supposed to sunset at least 4 different times. This year, in this budget, despite an $11 billion deficit, the sun is finally going down on the corporate business tax surcharge. That's a positive signal to business in New Jersey and those who want to come here. Secondly, we've had an extensive regulatory review in New Jersey. 25,000 pages of regulation governing conduct in New Jersey. My lieutenant governor's main role has been to start reviewing that regulation. We froze all regulation, new regulation coming in the first 100 days. She's issued a report We've eliminated nearly 20% of that new regulation right off the bat, and we're examining more. So we're trying to improve the regulatory environment. Third, we stood up against the millionaire's tax on small business and high net worth individuals. That's going to send a signal to the business community that we are moving in the correct direction. And I believe over the course of 4 years, as the national economy begins to improve a bit, I'm going to have more maneuverability to do more things on taxes to make it a more tax-friendly place for individuals and for business. But those are the steps we've taken in the beginning, Steve, to try to send a signal. Because all I can do right now is send signals to folks that things are going to get better in the state from a tax perspective. But we didn't get here overnight. And we're not going to get out of this hole overnight. You know, you got to give Jim McGreevey credit. You know, the guy was only governor for a little over 2 years. And he wrecked that state. I mean, it was seriously, in 30 months on the job, this guy was a wrecking crew. You got to love his energy. And he did more to mess up this state in 30 months than anybody even wanting to fix it could do in an equal amount of time. So we're going to have to work really hard to dig out from under the hole that Jim McGreevey's aggressively bad leadership gave us, and John Corzine's meek, timid, ineffectual leadership led us to get. I mean, we've had 2 governors in a row now who just have not had the first idea how to do this job. And so it's going to take a while for those of us who have a little bit of a better idea how to do it to dig ourselves out from underneath it. But I think we've sent some positive signals.
Okay, other questions? This gentleman here.
Could you tell us what percentage of voters in New Jersey live directly or indirectly off a government or union paycheck?
Yeah. Well, I can't give you the percentage, but I can tell you that we have more government workers per capita than any state in America, and we have more government workers per square mile than any place in America. That's owed to our densely populated nature. So I can't give you the percentage, but I can tell you that it is an extraordinary number, and by both per capita numbers and per square mile numbers, we're number one. Another thing we're so proud of. And just the statistics from '09 can give you the best example of that. I mean, when everything in the economy is cratering, where people are losing jobs in the private sector everywhere, our public sector grows at the municipal and school board level. But not by little, by 11,300 jobs, while we're shedding 121,000 private sector jobs. That will give you, without me giving you the exact number because I don't know it, will give you an idea of what happens in New Jersey. And it is a collection of fiefdoms, 566 municipalities in our small state, that combines to add to this. And we need to give those mayors new authority so they can accept new responsibility. See, right now everybody's doing this. You know, state government's saying, not our fault, we don't control property taxes, it's the mayors and the school boards. And the school boards and mayors saying, we'd love to control property taxes, but those guys in Trenton, they don't give us the tools to be able to do it. I'm ending the blame game. And I'm putting the responsibility and the authority where it belongs, which is closest to the people, where they can hold those people most responsible. Because you know what? It's really hard to get to a governor. I got those guys standing around me. You know, it's hard. It ain't easy to get to me. You want to get to your mayor? You can get to your mayor. And in any town in New Jersey, if a small, committed, enthusiastic group of people want to change their local government, they can do it. They can do it in a year or 2 at the most. So I want to return both authority and responsibility for these issues that are local in nature to the folks who should be making those decisions, not the folks in Trenton who live in gerrymandered districts where they can't get kicked out, and to governors who only have to stand up every 4 years for election.
So question, Rich, over there.
Governor, thanks so much for taking the time this morning. I think for most people in the room, there's no question that you're the most important governor in America right now. If I'm a Democrat in Trenton, you are my worst nightmare. What incentive do Democrats have to go along with your agenda?
Because many of them agree with me. Now, they won't say it out loud. They whisper it. But they know. You think Democrats like being bullied by the NJEA? You think they like being told what they must support? You think that urban legislators like the fact that the kids in their schools are being failed each and every day by an urban education system that is designed merely to enrich the union and not to educate the children? Do you think they like going into their churches and their mosques and their temples on Sunday and seeing the parents of these children who say, where's my hope for my kids? Where's their future? Why am I not allowed to choose to give my child the great equalizer in America, a world-class education? I don't think these legislators like hearing that. And I don't think they like feeling responsible for it. But I think they just didn't have anybody to give voice to it. Because we've been too timid. We've been cowed by these people. That's why they asked me yesterday, Governor, 35,000 people in Trenton, how did you feel? I said, I looked right in the camera and said, it had no effect on me at all. I could care less. Not because I'm not concerned about what my constituents are saying. I listened, I heard. It doesn't change my point of view. So I think the incentive, Rich, for Democrats is to say, what kind of state do you want your kids to grow up in? Because remember something, the current fervor that's going across America is really not about Republicans or Democrats, in my view. It's about entrenched incumbents who don't listen to the voice of the people. It is across the ideological spectrum. It's about people saying, you're not listening to me. And the Democratic-controlled legislature is up for election 2 years before I am. And so they obstruct at their own risk. And I'll give you just one example of the ability that we will take to use the bully pulpit in New Jersey. Now, in New Jersey, we have school board elections in April at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, at places where you don't normally go to vote in the regular election. And they kind of go, we're having a school board election, come on. Because the only people they want to vote are the teachers and the people the teachers have convinced to vote the way they want them to vote. So this year, when our teachers refused to share in the sacrifice and take a pay freeze for 1 year and contribute that 1.5% to their health benefits, I was asked by the press, what would you do, Governor, in a school district where they won't take the freeze? And as a result, property taxes will go up, teachers will be laid off, programs will be cut. I said, I'd vote against the budget. Now, traditionally in New Jersey, school board budgets pass at a rate of 74% over the last 20 years. So over the 2.5 weeks before the school board election, I dedicated most of my public time to the very simple proposition that if in your school district your teachers have not agreed to a pay freeze or to contribute to their health benefits, vote no on the budget. Now, some of my political advisors said to me, you're crazy. You're putting all this political capital up on the line when you know that 74% of the time people pass the budgets. Why are you doing this, Governor? I said, because it's the right thing to do. Do you agree it's the right thing to do? And they said, yes. I said, good, then we're doing it. Well, on April 20th, the school board elections, for the first time in New Jersey's history, 59% of the school budgets were defeated. And turnout went from 10% in 2009 to 25% in 2010. 2.5 times increase in turnout. And in a poll, 90% of the people polled said they were paying very close or somewhat close attention to the governor's fight on the school budgets. 90%. So what's the Democrats' incentive, Rich? The same incentive I have. If you don't listen to the people of New Jersey, the people of New Jersey will show you another way to make a living. And that's the incentive, and I think we're going to work together on these things. And I've already had indications that they understand it's the right thing to do. We're not going to agree on everything, but we're going to agree on a lot of this stuff, and we're going to get it passed, I believe. And if we don't, they face the voters before I do. We'll see how it goes.
Is this the last question? Okay.
Thank you. Governor, a resident of New Vernon, New Jersey.
There you go. You're a neighbor.
Supporter. Right. You're in Mendham.
Yes.
Everybody is right. Everybody is very supportive, and I agree with you. The citizenry is still behind you. But it strikes me that there's a golden opportunity and a need for a public education series. Just what you said this morning. You could fill, for the Star Ledger, at least 5 full-page ads of just facts that I think the average citizen just doesn't really know. Intuitively, they're behind you because they know something's wrong. But I think the fact base that you could provide, the public education, could be very valuable.
Yeah. Listen, I agree with you. I think that's part of what Steve was talking about in his comments is, part of getting the business community and other respected individuals to kind of put their money where their mouth is and help conduct that public education is one of the things that needs to be done. Secondly, I'm going to leave here and go back across the river to Rutherford, New Jersey, in Bergen County, in the only county where they actually passed a majority of the school budgets. And I'm going to have a town hall meeting on this morning. And I'm holding a series of town hall meetings across the state of New Jersey over the course of the next 40 days, between now and June 30th, in order to try to bring this stuff out to the public. The interesting thing about New Jersey is that, we don't have our own network affiliates, as you know, so we have to rely on New York TV and Philadelphia TV. So it's kind of difficult to drive a message and very expensive to drive a message. But I also have the bully pulpit of the governorship. And, there's a poll that came out this morning that said that 85% of the people in New Jersey don't know who Steve Sweeney, the Senate president, is. And 94% of the people in New Jersey don't know who the Speaker of the Assembly is, Sheila Oliver. I guarantee you this, there's nobody left who doesn't know me. And so we have to drive that advantage. And I have to continue to be out there and talking. And that's part of why I'm here this morning, because this gets me into New York and gets me into that media market, which is very important in our state to help drive message. And I'm traveling all over the state to have the kind of public education you're talking about. Could it be helped by others who want to, contribute to that public dialogue? Of course it could. And I would always welcome that help, but I can't wait for it. There's a great urgency to what we're doing. And it's the urgency of getting this done between now and June 30th so that we can push this agenda forward and start to give, as Steve asked before, the real strong signals to people that New Jersey is changing. See, people don't expect us to change overnight. They don't. They just want hope that we're going to change. Real indicators of the facts that will change. And so I think, I've only been in this job 4 months. And the attention that we've gotten is extraordinarily gratifying. And it's kind of sad, too, in a way. Because basically all I've done is to do what I said I was going to do in the campaign, and people are mystified by this. Now, the press corps in New Jersey looks at me like I'm a space alien, What's he doing? He's not supposed to do this. He's supposed to have said that and then do the mushy middle ground stuff that every politician does just to kind of bob and weave and get by. We're, I think, getting attention because we're saying this is what we said we were going to do, this is what we were sent here to do, and now we're doing it. Or we're going to go down trying. And it is a little sad for me as somebody who cares very deeply about our political system and thinks it really is the greatest system in the world, that I'm getting great public attention because I'm actually keeping my promises. It shows you the level of cynicism in America, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. So, I'm not perfect. I'm going to make plenty of mistakes. When you're me and you talk off the cuff most of the time, my poor communications director is in the back. She is the most nervous woman in America. But like I said to the reporter from the columnist from the Star Ledger in that video that you all saw, I am who I am. And this is who the people of New Jersey elected. And whether the liberal media in my state likes it or not, they're stuck with me for 4 years, at least. And I'm going to say what I think. I'm going to talk about the things I believe in. And all of you who care about New Jersey, who care about our country, who want to join in that fight are welcome to join in. I need reinforcements. And so that public education campaign is something I'm going to be deeply engaged in, that Senator Kaine is already deeply engaged in, and we're going to continue to work very hard at, because I do believe you're right. We get these facts in front of the right-thinking people of the state of New Jersey. And by that, I don't mean right or left politically. I mean correct, logical, reasonable people. They will decide the time has come for change, and real change. Change that gives us sustained economic growth. Change that brings us the type of New Jersey that we remember as kids. Vital, growing, prosperous, full of opportunity. The only reason to do this job is to bring that kind of opportunity. And any help any of you can give us in getting that message out there, I'm ready, willing, and able to accept your help. Add your voice to this cause. Not to me, to the cause. So I think that was the last question. So thank you all very much for having me.
Thank you, Governor. I think it is clear how fortunate we are to believe in the power of ideas.
Supply the common sense and the fresh thinking of the Manhattan Institute.